There was a morning, and I remember it clearly, when I woke up and reached across the bed before I was even fully awake. Not because I was thinking about it, not because I decided to. My hand just moved. And when it landed on an empty space, the weight of that emptiness hit me before I even opened my eyes. That is the thing nobody warns you about. It is not always the big moments that stop you cold. It is the small ones, the automatic ones, the ones your body still does because it spent a decades being half of something and nobody told it the math had changed. If you are listening to this right now, I want you to know something before we go any further. I am not going to tell you to move on. I am not going to tell you to stay strong. And I am not going to tell you that time heals everything, because time does not heal anything on its own. What you do inside of time is what does the healing. I am Ron Simplified Myers, and this is Rewrite the Story, a space built for the man who lost the person he built his life around and is now trying to figure out what comes next. Today, I want to talk about something that does not get said enough in the grief conversation. I want to talk about what it meant to choose her and what happens to a man when the person he chose, the one he woke up reaching for, is no longer there to be chosen. Have you ever stopped and thought about what it actually meant when you chose her? I do not mean the wedding. I do not mean the proposal or the ring or the moment you said I do in front of everyone you knew. I mean the quiet choosing, the everyday kind, the morning you were exhausted and frustrated and you chose to stay anyway, the night something was said that cut deep and you chose to come back to the table, the year that everything felt impossible and you chose each other anyway. That is what love actually is. Not the feeling, the choice, made over and over and over again in the small moments and the hard ones and the ordinary Tuesday afternoons that nobody remembers but somehow held everything together. You were a man who chose, and when she was taken from you, whether it was sudden or whether you watched it happen slowly over months or years, the choosing did not stop. You kept choosing. You chose to be present at the end. You chose to hold it together for the kids, for the family, for everyone in the room who needed you to be strong. You have been choosing this whole time. And now you wake up and there is no one to choose. That is not just grief. That is an identity crisis that most men never have a name for. I want to share something I have come to understand from my own journey and from the conversations I have had with men who are walking this road. When a man loses his wife, especially after a long marriage, he does not just lose a person. He loses the person who confirmed who he was. Think about that for a moment. She knew you, the real version, not the version you showed at work or at the family dinner or on the phone with your friends. She knew the version that came home at the end of the day, the version that worried, the version that doubted, the version that needed. And in knowing you, she reflected something back to you that told you, you are enough. You are wanted here. You belong. When that reflection disappears, a lot of men do not know what they are looking at anymore. They look in the mirror and they see a man going through the motions, eating, sleeping, showing up. But the sense of being chosen, of mattering to someone in the specific way that she made you matter, that is gone. And here's what that does to a man if he is not careful. It makes him believe that the best of his life is behind him. It makes the story he's telling himself sound like, I had my chapter. That was it. What comes now is just the rest. And that story, that one right there, is the one we need to rewrite. Here's what I know to be true. Not because someone told me, because I lived it. The capacity you built to love, the depth of choosing that you practiced every day of that marriage. That does not leave when she does. It stays in you. The question is not whether you're capable of being a man who shows up fully for life. You already proved that. You did it for decades. The question is whether you're going to give yourself permission to still be that man. And that is where most of us get stuck. Because somewhere along the way, maybe in the grief, maybe in the quiet of those first months, maybe in the comments from well-meaning people who said things like, at least she's not suffering anymore. Somewhere in all of that, a story started forming. A story that said moving forward means leaving her behind. A story that said if you laugh again, if you live again, if you find purpose and joy and something to look forward to on a Monday morning, that somehow that is a betrayal of what you had. I need you to hear me on this. That story is not the truth. That story is what happens when grief writes the ending before you have finished living the middle. She did not choose you so that you could stop. Think about the woman you loved. Really think about her, her spirit, the way she showed up, what she wanted for you. Do you honestly believe in the quiet part of you that still knows her, that she would want you frozen? I did not think so. Moving forward is not forgetting. Moving forward is honoring everything she poured into you by actually becoming the man she saw when she looked at you. That is not betrayal. That is tribute. Now I want to get practical with you for a moment, because I am not a man who believes in just feeling things. I believe in doing something with what you feel. Here's the first step I want you to take this week, just one. I want you to sit down, not in front of the television, not with your phone in your hand. Just sit down somewhere quiet. And I want you to answer one question, honestly. What is one thing about yourself that you stopped doing when she died? Not because you had to stop, not because of logistics or money or kids, but because some part of you decided, consciously or not, that doing it meant you were okay and you were not ready to be okay. Maybe it was cooking a real meal. Maybe it was going to the gym. Maybe it was calling a friend back. Maybe it was working on something you cared about. Whatever it is, I want you to identify it. Write it down if you can. Because that thing you stopped doing, that is a thread. And when you pull that thread, it leads back to the man you still are underneath the grief. You are not starting over. You are picking back up. There is a framework I teach inside the Rewrite the Story work. And it starts with this truth. Your story created a meaning. That meaning created an emotion. That emotion is driving every behavior in your life right now. Which means if you want to change how you are living, you do not start with the behavior. You start with the story. The story that says, I had my chapter is not permanent. It is not carved anywhere. It is just the one that made sense in the dark. But you are still here. And that means the chapter is not finished. What if the story was, I am a man who knows how to love deeply and that capacity does not expire? What if the story was, she chose me because she saw something worth choosing, and I am still that man? What if the story was, the greatest tribute I can pay to what we built is to keep building, with everything she gave me still alive inside of me? That is a different story, and a different story produces a different life. I want to close with this. There is going to come a day, maybe it is already here for some of you, maybe it is still a ways out, when you wake up and the reaching across the bed does not feel like loss, when it feels like memory, the good kind, the kind you carry with you instead of the kind that carries you under. That day does not mean you have forgotten. It means you have integrated. You have woven what was into who you are, and you are still walking forward. That is what rewriting the story looks like. Not erasing the chapters that hurt. Writing what comes next with the same hands that held everything you loved. You are not broken. Your story is. And stories can change. If today's episode hit something in you, I want you to go to simplifieduplifters.com. There is a book there called Rewrite the Story. And it was written for exactly the man you are right now. A man who is ready to stop surviving and start becoming. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing, even now, to keep going. And most important, remember, you are extraordinary.